Okay, if you already have the concept of the imaginary number, we now want to look at being able to solve questions like this. Now, you may want to use the quadratic equation to solve this initially because you won't be able to factorize it straight away. So I'm going to put all those numbers into the quadratic equation. So we have minus b, so we have 4 here, b squared, 16, and 4 times 1 times 7 is minus 28. Now I can see that there's going to be a problem if I don't know about imaginary numbers, because inside the square root we have a negative 12. But because we now know about imaginary numbers, we can take the I, or the minus 1, square root of minus 1, out of there. So we now have I square root of 12. Now from here, you can almost forget about the I for a minute and just concentrate on the square root of 12. We're going to use surds in there to make that 4 times 3. So it becomes 2 outside, still got the I there, and root 3. But we're almost there. We just need to divide 4 by 2 and 2 by 2 to get that final answer there. So when I try to solve it, I've got my numbers as 2, because it's 4 divided by 2, plus 2, and that's divided by 2, so it's 2 plus I root 3, and of course 2 minus I root 3. Now one thing I want to explain here is that this is now a complex number. Both of these are complex numbers. Okay, complex numbers involve imaginary and real numbers. So we've got imaginary numbers, which is just the I part, and complex, which are things like real numbers. 2 add 4i, for example. So it's got a real part and an imaginary part, making it a complex number. So that's quite straightforward to do the solutions if you're happy with imaginary numbers and the concept of those. So let's have a look at how maybe we could factorize that. So how am I going to factorize it? I know my solutions from the previous one. Okay, and if I know my solutions, I can just put them into a bracket every single time with these negatives. So my solution x, take away this, and x, take away this. You might want to take a minute to expand this bracket and just satisfy that you get back to the beginning. Now one further thing, these two numbers, which is this and this, one is the solution and the other one is called the conjugate. So if x is called this is the conjugate of x. Let's just make up another imaginary number. Rather than use x, let's use another imaginary number. Sorry, a complex number. Let's call this z equals 3 minus 2i. Then the conjugate of z we write as z star, and that will be 3 plus 2i. When I multiply these two together in factorized form, and you can just stop and do this yourself in a minute, you will recognize that this, the other one that's factorized, which is z minus again, but 3 plus 2i. When you actually multiply these out, you will end up with something in this form with all the parts a, b, and c as real numbers and not imaginary numbers. So just to summarize, we've gone through how to solve a quadratic equation with imaginary numbers. We know how to put them into roots, and we also now know what the conjugate means. Further, we actually also know what a complex number is as opposed to an imaginary number.